Press start. Check this out.
Welcome back to BATBEATS. We are here to listen to some amazing music and appreciate the artists behind it. I am your host, DJ Justdistic, and this video is all about Bossfight, the master of creative bass music, at least in my opinion. Bossfight is the musical alias of Swedish electronic music artist Erik Björngard. Hope I'm saying that right. His story begins long before the alias of Bossfight existed in the way that it does today. For the longest time, I had so many questions about this guy. The biggest one being, how can someone go from making this kind of music to making this kind of music? The answer is a really long and interesting story, so let's start from the beginning. Back in the 2000s, Erik grew up under the influence of many music genres, from metal to hip-hop, and especially chiptune. He started making music at a very young age, but we will never know how much stuff he did make. But he did become a public music artist in the early 2010s. He got together with Sebastian Persson and Robin Jensen, and just like that, Bossfight, the Brit-pop trio, was born. Psych! They didn't actually have the Bossfight alias that we know today. Hell, they didn't even have an alias when they first started making music publicly. They shifted between a bunch of different aliases, but ultimately settled on Bossfight. I assume it wasn't for any complex reasons, it just sounded cool, I assume. So yeah, I did not include this in the original script, in case it wasn't obvious. Together, they released 2 banger chiptune albums and some very wacky video game remixes. And the music from these albums got featured and licensed in games including Geometry Dash and Just Shapes and Beats. By the way, that's how I discovered Bossfight's music for the first time. Caps On, Hats Off is an album that I have been listening to since middle school. And also, from 2013 to 2017, Erik was also part of the Swedish music band Dunder Patrulum. He was the band's drummer. I will talk more about them, but I'm going to give them their own video. But of course, times change. As time went on, the Bossfight alias became just a duo between Erik and Robin, and eventually, Erik was the only person making music under the alias. In this time frame, Bossfight put out some really experimental music in the form of small albums, collabs, and a few remixes. This kind of music, which has been dubbed as hyperwave, was artistically as nostalgic as it was forward-thinking in its creativity. My favorite music that Bossfight has ever made comes from this era. I should make a video on hyperwave itself, because to my knowledge, it is a dead aesthetic and it's too cool to be forgotten.
Just like in the previous era, Bossfight's music was primarily popular in video games, whether it was featured or licensed. However, Bossfight took it one step further and started producing music for video games, like Geometry Dash and Dub Dash. He even composed the soundtrack for a little retro fighting game that never got released. Also, around this time, Bossfight crossed paths with another artist, Tom Moritzen, also known as Meganeko. Bossfight and Meganeko are two artists cut from the same cloth. Both were Swedish indie electronic music artists who came from chiptune backgrounds and made cool experimental music with a nostalgic touch, and got well known in the same spaces. They both did remixes for each other's work, and to my knowledge, they are good friends. Now you might be thinking, if they knew and liked each other's work respectively, did they collab? The truth is, yes and no. While they did make a collab together, it never got released. I was able to get my hands on the collab itself, but I'm not going to play it in this video because I respect the artists involved and I understand that it was not up to the musical standards that they have today, regardless of how awesome I think it is. That being said, I will show you guys the cover art since it was made public by the artist who made it. It goes so unreasonably hard. Unfortunately, all this stuff never happened, due to both artists working on other projects and ended up going in different creative directions. Meganeko continued to make amazing music as an indie artist, and as for Bossfight, he was offered the opportunity of a lifetime from a penguin with an AK-47. In 2017, Bossfight got onto Monster Cat with his debut track, Subside, with a Fixa, and nothing was the same from that point forward. Looking back, it's kind of weird how little Subside actually represents Bossfight's music moving forward. The hyperwave music was gone, unfortunately, and was replaced with some of the hardest and most creative bass music you could ever listen to, complemented by more dark and gritty aesthetics. I'm not complaining, by the way, I do like this stuff, I just miss the hyperwave a little bit. He has released many awesome singles and 2 banger albums. I highly recommend The Agony District. It's probably his best work as far as albums go. He has done remixes for Panda Eyes, Reaper, Muzz, and Sullivan King, among others. He's also done plenty of collabs with artists like Pegboard Nerds, Dirty Phonics, and Fool. His music has also been featured in games like Rocket League and Beat Saber, and pretty much almost any game that Monster Cat does a collab with. As of me making this video, he has released over 40 tracks on Monster Cat. His music has consistently gotten into Monster Cat's Best of the Year compilations, and he is the most voted artist on Monster Cat Uncaged. With all of this in mind, I think it would be important to mention that around this particular time in the late 2010s, Bossfight was not really active in the community that he had built up over the years with good music and branding. He mostly laid low and focused on his craft, which is fine. Lots of creative people do this, especially introverts. But at the time that I got more familiar with Bossfight as an artist and a public figure, I got the impression that the man took himself and his work very seriously, as well as being very socially reserved and not really concerned with interacting with his community in any meaningful way. And when I talk about community interaction, I'm not talking about the social media marketing bull that every artist gets bullied into doing nowadays. I'm talking about the kind of interaction that prevents you from separating the art from the artist, whether it be personal, situational, or just a fun time. It doesn't have to be deep. Overall, the vibe I got was very closed off and intimidating, and seeing the extremely hard music industry photo shoots and learning about the catalog of unreleased music that stretches all the way back to his Bitpop days didn't really change that. It's an intimidating look from my perspective, but you can obviously disregard it because creative people who exercise that kind of quality control will always intimidate me. And I am still talking about the past. What happened next completely changed my my mind. Welcome to hell, I mean the 2020s. At this time, Bossfight decided to completely rebrand his style, drop 3 new singles with cover art drawn by himself, and started live streaming and getting more involved with his community. Also at this time, I was able to get into the Bossfight Discord server, which had existed for some time, and I made a few friends and even got to hang out with the man himself. At first, I was nervous. I hope I did my best to hide it. But after hanging out in a few voice chats and live streams, my perceptions have changed. At the end of the day, Bossfight is just a chill guy with hardcore tastes, committed to being the best artist he can be, and he is living his best life as far as I can tell. He does care and is genuinely surprised just how much he has influenced people around the world to become artists themselves. Unfortunately, I'm not an artist, unless you consider editing an art form. But I was still influenced, and I want to show it. So before this video ends, I just want to say thank you to Bossfight for everything. The music, the aesthetics that only you could make, and of course, this amazing story and evolution, and I look forward to whatever you have in store for the future. With that being said, this is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.
Welcome to the end game.